Ada, I have heard and read a lot about the RPF, but I am still not fully clear about it. Yes, people are made to run, not talk to anyone, work very hard, eat scraps, sleep on the floor, a guard is at the locked door, and there are bars on the windows. It is like a bad prison with heavy work program during the day. But can a person, if they make up their mind, simply say, I am not going to oblige, and I demand that I be let out? The church maintains it is voluntary, and it seems to me that there is some truth to that in the sense that people do not refuse to go to the RPF and believe they need to do it for their own good. I understand that they are brainwashed, but I want to assume that someone is not, or have come to their senses, and demands to be let out. What will the church do in that instance? Will they use physical force to keep someone locked? Will they threaten use of physical force? Okay, well, this is, there's all kinds of factors in the answer to this question because this idea of brainwashing or undue influence is a strong one. And so the bottom line is, if someone demands to be let go, they will be let go eventually. Until they're let go, will there be the use of physical force to restrain them? Sure, that'll happen. Are there rules or guidelines about that? No, it's a case-by-case basis. Some people have been physically restrained, others have not. Some people have been physically beaten, others have not. It's a variable thing, and it's not a black and white sort of a situation, and that's sort of one of the things that has to be understood about life in the Sea Organization, and especially when you get into the heavy-duty stuff like the RPF. And there's misconceptions about this through the various stories and whatnot that have come out of ex-members, myself included, as to all the various experiences to it, right? Let me try to make something clear that I might have talked about before, but I'll say this newly, is the RPF, the Rehabilitation Project Force, is a program that a person has to go to willingly. It hasn't always been that way. The RPF has a very long history. It goes all the way back to the 1970s, and it existed on the ship that Hubbard was on. And when it was first implemented or put into place, it was not voluntary at all. But over the years, Scientology has changed. And it's changed because of the fact that people have come out of Scientology, come out of the Sea Organization, and have exposed the dark underbelly of what goes on in that group, and have exposed the abuses and the human rights violations. And as a result of that, Scientology and the Sea Organization has had to change how it goes about doing things. That's why enforced abortions don't necessarily occur now like they used to. That's why the RPF is sort of not quite as rigorous as it once was, okay? So there has been change over the years. It's been slow, it's been gradual, it's been not very willing on the part of the Sea Org to change. It was given their own, if it was left up to them, they wouldn't have changed. But it was because of the exposure of the abuses that those changes were made. So in answering this question, I have to look at the whole time period, and I have to say, well, yeah, people were physically restrained. When you were on the ship, you couldn't just go, okay, I want to leave now, and then they were just going to go sail to the next port and let you go. It didn't work that way. And the mind control, the undue influence that a person is under when they're in the Sea Organization and in Scientology is not something to easily discount. It's not something to just write off and go, yeah, it's no big deal, because it wouldn't happen to me, which has got to be, quite honestly, one of the most ignorant statements anybody could make, because there is no one I know or have ever met who is immune to undue influence and thought control. It happens to every single one of us every day. And when you learn about this, and you learn about how we accept truth, how we accept reality, how we go about making decisions and judgments about things, then you learn how it is that people are under all kinds of undue influence all over the place, right? Which is not to say that we live in the Matrix or some nonsense like that. I'm just making the point that there isn't anybody who's above this or immune to this, okay? And there are degrees of it. And when you get involved in a destructive cult, you have gone very far down a line of undue influence, and you are under the control of the unwitting control. You didn't agree to be controlled, but you are under the control of other people. And you've given up enough of your own free will and your own determinism that you now find yourself in a situation that you never would have agreed to on day one, and yet there you are. And thus the RPF. So if you fight out of that, if you get your head out of that space and you go, look, this is whoa, this is crazy, I don't want to do this, you can push yourself out of it, and Scientology or the Sea Organization won't have any choice but to let you out. But they will delay the process. They will take months before they'll let you out. They go through all these procedures. There's a lot of waiting around. There's a lot of just doing busy work just because they're stalling, really. And they take various opportunities to sit you down and try to change your mind, try to get you re-indoctrinated, right? They try various approaches and various means. One of them is by sitting you down and putting you on the e-meter and asking for your crimes or asking for what it was you've done that was wrong. But there are other techniques they use too, right? There's a thing called love bombing, where one or more people will sit you down and just admire you and tell you how valuable you are and what a horrible thing it would be if you were to leave the group and leave them all hanging, leave them all without your skills and abilities. And it's kind of a little bit of a guilt trip, but it's mixed in with a lot of ego, boosting, right? How wonderful you are, how great you are, what an asset you are to the group. And and then also talking to you about, why did you get into the group in the first place? And don't you still want to see that accomplished, whatever goals or purposes you had, saving the planet or becoming a better person or moving up the bridge yourself, all these various things. They're all techniques that are used to keep the person on board. So a person who wants to leave is subject to all of these things. And we concentrate on or talk about the physical abuses and the hardships and stuff, and we don't really talk enough probably about the other much more subtle forms of mind control that go on. But some of those more subtle forms are even more powerful than the physical abuse or physically restraining somebody. And unfortunately, legally, those more subtle forms of coercion and heavy-duty persuasion techniques are not particularly recognized legally, right? And so the church can get away with any number of those things, or any destructive cult can get away with any number of techniques. But since they're not physically tying you down, hey, what's the problem? He was free to leave anytime he wanted to, But when you truly believe that if you leave this group, you will suffer a lifetime of hardship and toil and suffering, and if you truly think that by leaving this group, you are dooming the world to a horrible existence, then are you really free to go? Like, these are things that enter into the equation. So that's just something I wanted to mention. Also, another thing is that the stories about the hole that David Miscavige created in the double-wide trailer up at the International Base in Hemet is not the RPF. That is not that. What was done to those people in that double-wide trailer with the bars on the windows and the guard at the door, that's not the RPF. That is a different thing. That's something Miscavige dreamed up all on his own. And it has similarities to the RPF, but it's not the RPF. So I just wanted to make that clear, because those things get confused. And also, just one last thing I'll clarify in this is that the RPF is a Sea Org only activity. Now again, hasn't always been that way. I've met people who did the RPF who were never in the Sea Org. This is back in the 80s, right, when things were really wild and crazy. So again, things have changed over the years. Things, get modified. Things get revised, etc. So I'm trying to give as clear a picture as I can, and I hope this helps answer your question.